my name is Adam Hajan, and this video is prepared for Dr. Shiroki for Finance 139, Wednesday night 6 to 8:50 p.m. This project presentation will be looking at due diligence, private placement memorandums, private placement offerings, and the anatomy of a term sheet. We'll start off with due diligence. Due diligence is taking the time to review a company thoroughly inside and out before any contracts are signed. This can be any type of contract. Any stakeholder of a company can have a reason to perform due diligence to cross-check the company's financial statements, management activity, or any claims made by that specific company. So the uses of due diligence. Due diligence can be both a shield or a weapon for the signer of a contract. Its uses can be many. When acquiring a company, the target stock price or the price paid by the acquirer can be cut in half or do something else entirely by convincing the acquirer that this is not a smart purchase, in which case the due diligence would have acted as a shield, blocking the company from making the purchase. When it cuts the price in half due to some unexpected or hidden events, like a lawsuit or something that the company had reverted from their financial statements, then the price of the entire company can go down due to that, and this can be a weapon when used this way. Due diligence would be a weapon. So the implementation of due diligence: when a company, investor, auditor, or any other stakeholder decides to perform a due diligence on a business, the reason for the due diligence determines everything: how it is performed, what is analyzed, who is questioned, and can all be affected. There is no set template that points to the direction on what to ask, who to ask, what statements to look at. Obviously, if it is for a takeover, the entire company will be reviewed. Especially the financials. If the due diligence is being performed on a non-profit organization, then maybe the questions asked may not be to the company at all, but towards the recipients of the charities or other organizations that are involved within the non-profit. The next term we're going to be looking at is a private placement memorandum. Private placement memorandum is issued when a company is in need of capital to facilitate growth. It is designed to catch the attention of investors and encourage them to perform due diligence and eventually invest in the company. A PPM, private placement memorandum, outlines the restrictions and opportunities available if the investment is made. What makes a PPM special is that it is a way to raise capital for private companies. Although they are under the Securities Act from 1933, PPM's registration with the Securities and Exchange Commission is not required. So the uses of a PPM. Private companies usually have PPMs written up for them by professional firms that specialize in this area. By issuing one to select investors, it provides the chance for these future candidates to have a document to check against when performing their due diligence. However, a private placement memorandum could have been made appealing to the investor because the company had it written up for themselves. So it should be noted that if performing due diligence, looking at the private placement memorandum is probably not the best idea, but it can be used as a reference. Implementation: when a PPM is written, it has a specific outline that is usually followed. The first page usually includes a summary of the offering and a short description of the company, along with a couple of their signature strengths. This page is followed by a summary of offering terms. This second section includes a term sheet, outlining the specifics of the investment opportunity. This is followed by a risk factor section detailing the different possibilities of what could happen and how investments made would be affected. A more detailed description of management and the company follows, along with financial statements and pertaining documents attached. The next term we're going to be looking at is private placement offering. A private placement offering is when a private placement memorandum is distributed or issued to the limited hand-picked group of investors. Since the offering is not considered a public offering of securities, registration with the SEC is not required. This creates a cost-saving aspect associated with PPOs, which, although is beneficial, has some cons that go along with it as well. Uses: since there are many costs involved when a company goes public due to the SEC requirements, small companies may choose to raise capital by using a PPO instead. Since no brokers, underwriters, or legal assistance is required, time and money is saved when choosing the strategic alternative of conducting a PPO instead of an IPO. However, this limits the number of potential investors from anybody in the world to a handful of select investors. Implementation of a PPO. After a successful PPO has been conducted, small companies will have the needed resources to facilitate growth. Since the PPM is offered to only a select group of investors, the returns described within are structured to meet the needs of the potential financiers to make the PPO more appealing. However, any investor will perform their due diligence to make sure that the offering is not absurd or false, and that the goals set for the company describing the paths that will be taken within the memorandum are real and attainable. The last thing we're going to be looking at is the anatomy of a term sheet, which would be found in a PPO. A term sheet is usually included in a PPM. It is the meat of the entire document, outlining exactly what investments will be made or are needed. It can be presented by a company to an investor or by an investor to a company. Either way, both parties review the term sheet extensively and make sure that their specific needs are being addressed. And that if they are not, then adjustments will be made, and the second or the other party would review those adjustments to make sure that they're good with it before signing the document. Although a term sheet is not a document that would help much when a company or investor is performing its due diligence, it is the most important part of a PPM. An investor can flip through a project or multiple projects, look at the term sheets before anything else to determine if the project is even worth considering. After this has been completed, the rest of the proposal will be reviewed, and if everything lines up the way the investor anticipated, due diligence will be performed. Acceptance of the proposal after due diligence has been completed will bind the investor to the contract. The term sheet is where it starts. Implementation. After a term sheet has been issued and both parties have performed necessary adjustments, the plan can be implemented. This is when the terms agreed upon will become live, and the investors will provide the funds they have said they would provide, and the investee will supply the return at the appropriate time when the contract is fulfilled. And that is our coverage of PPOs, PPMs, anatomy of a term sheet, and due diligence. Thank you.